SuperTalk Mississippi media production.
Ride with us during Mississippi's favorite bike ride. Join us in Greenwood Saturday, August 1st. Bikes, Blues, and Bayous kicks off in historic downtown Greenwood. Cruise the flat, fast Delta roads. Register now at bikesbluesbayous.raceroster.com.
MidDays with Gerard Gibert is on the air. MidDays with Gerard Gibert is powered by C Spire. Power your home or business with C Spire Fiber. To learn more, visit supertalk.fm/C Spire. C Spire Fiber powers SuperTalk Mississippi. Get ready to go beyond the headlines and join a meaningful conversation with people from around the state. You're listening to MidDays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to MidDays, SuperTalk Mississippi. I'm your host, Gerard Gibert, along with Rhino in the Element Wealth Studio, guiding you through the middle of your day with facts, fodder, and fine music. Morning there, Rhino.
Howdy, howdy.
It's summertime outside. There is no doubt about that. We went from the monsoon period. Now it's just hot. There is a chance for some weather in the southern region of our state today. I think just a passing storm here and there, not like a washout like we have experienced, but it's really not that bad. It's hot, but I didn't find it to be too oppressively humid this morning. Bright sunshine, blue skies up ahead. Meanwhile, how about that Supreme Court? They've been busy on the last day of the term, handing out decisions like popcorn, as the saying goes. And in fact, we've got law professor Christopher Green on MidDays at 12:05 to break all this down for us. But a series of decisions hot off the press, folks, if you haven't heard, literally just within the last hour, right, Rhino? These all came down. And the Supreme Court says that the president's bid to curb birthright citizenship is rejected. That basically means that they said if you're born in this country, you are a citizen. I believe, is that the 14th Amendment, I think, is where that provision is enshrined in our founding document. I think the court got it right from a strict text perspective. But from a practical perspective, what the president calls, that I agree with, this birth tourism is outrageous. Once again, I think, Rhino, we have to think about the founders, period, and today. I don't think they envision a Joe Biden being in office as the president and basically turning his back on our sovereignty, our borders, our border patrol. They just didn't envision millions of people crossing over, or, to the president's point, the current president, pregnant women from other countries coming into this country just in time to drop their baby. That is what's going on. The founders didn't envision that, understandably. That's the problem. The problem isn't the Supreme Court ruling here. The problem is fools like Joe Biden who get elected president and honestly thumb their nose at our laws. That's the fundamental problem. And here we are. So I think the key to dealing with this issue going forward, now that this ruling has been handed down, is to close the dang borders. Now, the president's done that. This president's done that, but who knows what the future holds? We don't know.
Well, the other thing would be is if you could get Congress off their lazy rear ends to actually do something. they could rescind the language in, was it the Guam Territory Act of 1950? I read about it like a month and a half ago now. But Guam is where the majority of Chinese birth tourism occurs because it's closer to China.
Yeah.
And they'll just land on Guam, have the baby, go back to China. And the baby has U.S. citizenship. Not because of the 14th Amendment. That was a law put in place in the 50s by Congress.
Right. That's right.
So the birthright citizenship question before the Supreme Court really, at least the way I read it, even if they had gone with the president's idea, wouldn't have stopped the Chinese birth tourism going on in Guam.
Well,
because that citizenship isn't granted by the 14th Amendment.
Okay.
That citizenship is granted by a whole law passed by Congress.
Well, thanks for that clarification. So then what you're saying is Congress could take action to severely limit this practice. Well, but I believe they're out of session, right? The Senate, at least, right, is gone. They're out. Man. So the other big ruling that came down this morning, really two more, but one in particular that is of interest to the state of Mississippi. And this is a ruling that essentially protects women's sports. And, you know, here in Mississippi, and I believe 26 other states, we have laws recently enacted, recently as in the last few years, that prevent
dudes in dresses
from playing against girls and females in sports. I mean, why are we even having to have this discussion at the highest court in this country?
Because it's the illogical but the quote-unquote logical conclusion of the slippery slope we've been on ever since women started demanding to be in men's spaces.
Unbelievable.
This is where it winds up.
It's incredible. So the justices ruled in favor, actually, the parties here, West Virginia and Idaho, against trans athletes who sued those states to gain access into girls' sports. So these states were backed by the law firm Alliance Defending Freedom, ADF. The trans athletes were represented, no surprise here, Rhino, by the American Civil Liberties Union and Cooley Legal. So the High Court upheld these laws. This is good news. And that means the state of Mississippi's law stands. This is a huge victory for every female athlete who has ever competed. Now, let's be clear. This law does not order the 23 states that allow the dudes in dresses to compete against the females. Doesn't order them to ban that practice. It just upholds laws that have been passed in the states such as Mississippi that bans that practice. It's just really incredible that's going on in this country. But I think this is a win for the states such as Mississippi that have just implemented what is just common sense. But that seems to be lacking often in many of our states. And they're like people that have put papers out. Have you seen this? That are trying to gaslight people with half a brain and ears and eyes and senses into thinking that, oh, no, this isn't unfair. It's not unfair. When you get these burly, buffed-up guys that are lapping the field in track events, out jumping, throwing, everything else, spiking the volleyball, a report you and I shared a year or two ago that caused a concussion for a young lady on the other side because it was some burly dude that got up above the net and just spiked it right into her head. Oh, that's fine. It's not unfair. Unbelievable. The lengths they will go to gaslight people that just have half a brain. Don't they have something else to do? Evidently not. So that gets handed down.
I mean, if there's not a difference in men's and women's sports, why do we have men's and women's sports? And to a sharper point, Why do women's sports have smaller infrastructure as far as, like, if you're jumping hurdles, women jump shorter hurdles than men. Volleyball, the net's lower for women than it is for men.
Yeah.
Like, if there's not a difference here, why are they separated? Why don't we just have what we always have on the men's side, an open division where anybody can compete?
Well, a game I love, golf. Why are the courses shorter? Does it have?
If there's no difference,
unbelievable. And remember, we reported on one of the males that entered some. Was it? I don't think it was a professional golf tournament because the LPGA doesn't allow it, but it was some other high-profile golf tournament. And he just obviously lapped the field. But what was insane is seeing how he was dressed and trying to look the part with the little athletic skirt on and the ponytails. Who in the hell do they think they're kidding with that crap? With a big old Adam's apple pointed out.
I mean, they're already delusional enough to believe that a man can become a woman. So, of course, they're delusional enough to think they look sexy in that tennis skirt.
Or have a child, right? A female who claims that they're a male. And then they say, oh, but it's a pregnant person or a birthing person. No, it's not. It's a girl. It's a female having a child. You can't defy science and biology. We're coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
Just hearing the word
We're rolling. Middays with Gerard Gibert.
What? This is so
Awesome. On SuperTalk, Mississippi.
We're back with you in the Element Wealth studio, so we're just running through these landmark decisions handed down by the Supreme Court earlier this morning. Another big one concerns the money in politics. They lifted the spending limits on political parties and candidates. Republicans had asked the court to strike down the restrictions on how much political parties can spend when they coordinate with candidates. And so they won, essentially, and this is kind of a blow to the Democrats. I know people have different views on this. I've certainly talked a lot about the massive amount of money being infused into politics. It's gotten to the point where, in many situations and races in this country, depending on the state, of course, unless you're just filthy rich, you can't run or you can't win. Witness the Republican primary for governor in Georgia just decided a couple of weeks ago. A business person there who was in the nursing home industry, if I'm not mistaken, did quite well. His name escapes me right now, but his opponent was the lieutenant governor of the state of Georgia in the Republican primary. He spent $100 million of his own money, and he won the primary. So that's just one example. We've discussed what is currently on record as the most expensive federal race other than for president, but for Congress in history, and that was the 2024 Senate election in Ohio. $484 million dumped into that one. But hold my beer, says Texas and North Carolina. You got in Texas the nutcase James Tallarico, the Democrat, in a heated contest with the Republican nominee, Ken Paxton. They already got a couple $100 million dumped into that one between both. Look for $800 possibly million to be spent on this Senate race in Texas. But North Carolina is likely to go down as the most expensive ever, with former Governor Roy Cooper, the Democrat. He's incredibly popular in North Carolina, which is very much a purple state, and he is in an incredibly stiff race with Michael Whatley, former RNC chair. I believe he was chair. He's the Republican nominee. There are some political analysts who are predicting $1 billion spent. $1 billion on a U.S. Senate race. $1 billion. I can't wrap my head around that one, honestly. But that's where we are. And so I think it bears repeating. My position is that this indicates we have transferred, we have conferred far too much power to political office. When there's that much interest, that much money being spent on a single Senate seat, it ain't supposed to be that way. What happened by the old of, by, and for the people? That sounds more like it's of, by, and for the candidate, the office holder, or those who have plans to leverage their investments in those races and expect some payback. That's what concerns people. And I think the average person says, well, I don't have a voice. I don't have that kind of money. I can't get to the table there and receive attention. My concerns are just overlooked, ignored. It's a problem in this country, no doubt about it. But the main thing, the Supreme Court says, nope, no limit on that. There was a restriction. Now the Supreme Court says there's not. So that's where we stand on that. So 3 big cases ruled on today. Of course, the birthright citizenship was certainly a landmark decision. The transgender athlete participation. These are males, of course, who pretend that they're females and then go compete against females in sports. The Supreme Court says, yeah, states that have laws that prohibit that, those laws are good to go. They can stand. That includes the state of Mississippi. And then this campaign finance ruling. Those are the 3 big ones. We'll check in with law professor Christopher Green at 12:05 today to get his thoughts and perspective on that. And the president says we have tremendous loss and a big win, reacting to the mixed bag of Supreme Court rulings from his perspective. Mainly,
Wait.
Yeah.
I thought the Democrats were saying they had to pack the Supreme Court because the court was in the bag for Trump.
Oh, that's a good point. Not that way, it turns out.
It's almost like Hakeem Jeffries is full of you-know-what.
No, it's not almost like. He definitely is. So, the late arriving mail-in ballots case that was decided upon yesterday, postmarked by Election Day but arrived afterwards, the court said, yep, that can stand. The president expressed his displeasure with the ruling. All the more reason we need to pass the Save America Act. And in fact, the president said that immediately following this ruling on his Truth Social platform. He's been pushing this legislation, been very forceful about it, but heck, the Senate's not even around. Where's John Thune? Where's he? This would, of course, require... It's amazing that we can't get this done. I mean, it's hard to believe I even have to say this. You got to prove you're a citizen before you vote, and that you who you are with a photo ID. What the heck's wrong with that? Unbelievable. So, and there were some other changes, and it does make you at least form the opinion that, well, there's only one reason you oppose this, because you want to cheat. And again, I maintain that it's the mass mail out. You said yesterday, yeah, when a box full of ballots arrives in an apartment somewhere, you know there's something fishy going on. And that actually is not exaggerating. And it's the 7 states. We went through them yesterday. Rhino, God help us if Pennsylvania were to ever adopt that practice in conducting their elections. It appears that Pennsylvania has become the quintessential purple swing state in presidential elections. to some extent Michigan, Wisconsin, North Carolina, but the big haul of electoral votes, Pennsylvania. And if they were to institute a mass mail-out of ballots, such as the practice in California, you went through them, Colorado, Nevada, Oregon, Washington, Hawaii, and crazy Vermont. I think I got them all there, the 7. If they were to institute that, it's game over. We never win another presidential election. I'm convinced of that. Convinced of that. With a mass mail-out. And the president has indicated that he completely opposes that. He does support mail-in. He personally votes via mail-in, with reasonable exceptions to accommodate the infirmed, our brave men and women in uniform that are overseas. Makes sense.
But you can't expect worthless liberals to understand that nuance.
That's absolutely right. Oh, you're suppressing. It's Jim Crow. No, it's not. Nobody's suppressing anybody's ability to vote. What they don't like is that they can't vote for who they want to vote for. That's what they're mad about with this redistricting ruling that we got not so long ago. And in fact, I got a press release yesterday, let me see if I can pull it up here, from the Mississippi Democratic Party. Aren't they something? And they, this is the headline. Mississippi Democratic Party condemns Governor Reeves' call to strip voting protections from military service members and Mississippi voters. No, we didn't. To your point about the nuance, just get it in by Election Day. That's all we're saying here. Now, our law does provide the 5-day grace period. That's been on the books a few years. It does appear, based on the governor's statements from other lawmakers in Mississippi, that they're likely to change that and amend that in the next session to what it used to be. It's got to be in our hands by Election Day. That's not precluding our service members from voting. I don't even want to say this, but I am anyhow. Why do you got to lie, folks?
That's all they do. They do it like breathing.
It's incredible.
It's the only way they can get anything accomplished because their ideals, their ideology is nothing but crap.
It makes me mad. And so when you look through the press release, and they've got different sections, of course, in the release, but this is the headline of the section concerning this ruling in the governor's plan to change that to require ballots to be in by Election Day. The military betrayal. We're not betraying the military. We're coming right back.
From the C.
It's time for
Middays with Gerard Gibert on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
To be so bad to you. One thing I said that I would never do. A look from you and I would fall from grace, and that would wipe the smile right from my face. Do you remember when we used to...
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Well studio. That's Asia. Heat of the Moment. Great tune. Appreciate that, Rhino. So, just continuing a bit with this press release from the Mississippi Democrat Party condemning Governor Tate Reeves' response to the United States Supreme Court ruling concerning consideration of mail-in ballots.
I'm going to put out a press release condemning the Mississippi Democrat Party for dropping my IQ a couple points from reading their dribble.
So I already told you in the last segment about the military betrayal, which is a complete lie, of course. And then the other section of this release a pattern of selective outrage. That's what they said.
That's rich.
No, I agree.
Coming from the people that can't figure out what to be outraged over until they're told.
Well, in fact,
From the people who haven't had an original thought since they turned 18, and all the time before that, they just did whatever mommy, daddy, and the teacher said.
in fact, a friend that's tuned in from North Mississippi just said, please make sure you cover all the rioting that the Republicans in the MAGA crowd will be doing this afternoon and tonight due to the Supreme Court rulings.
I mean, you knew birthright citizenship was not going down
Of course.
3 dadays ago when they weren't putting up the riot fence outside the Supreme Court.
That's exactly right. But, of course, his point is, had these decisions gone, or prior decisions, we've seen a ridiculous, radical reaction, because that's all they know how to do is go out and riot and destroy property and hurt people, honestly. That's how they at least attempt to make their point. But the Democratic Party says our governor is engaged in selective outrage. Quote, when the court struck down affirmative action, Reeves said Mississippi would, quote, enthusiastically work to comply with both the letter and spirit of the decision. When the court overturned Roe v. Wade, he declared that Mississippi had led the nation and called on Mississippians to rejoice. When the court cleared the way for Republicans to redraw political maps in Louisiana versus Calais, he boasted, first Dobbs, now Calais, just Mississippi and Louisiana down here saving the country. So, no, Democrats, this isn't selective outrage. This is exercising federalism. What the court said is those are decisions for the state. And every one of those, right? Every one of those. They basically confirmed the structure, the framework of our country. That's what they're supposed to do. Not be lawmakers in robes. That's what the Democrats want. They're mad. They're the ones that are selectively outraged because our governor said, the Supreme Court said, you states do it however you want. So when people in Mississippi say, yeah, we don't want affirmative action. Our governor said, well, the Supreme Court said that we don't have to abide by that. Therefore, we're clearing the way. I hate affirmative action. It's stupid. You want to know what socialism really is? That's socialism right there. That's government telling employers how they will conduct their business from an employment perspective. Not you employers, you go out and you hire people and you hire the most qualified, the most skilled, the most experienced. You figure out, you have the right to determine who best is suited for the positions for which you're hiring without government sitting at the board table. That's what made this country great, right there.
There's not a single Democrat policy put forth in my lifetime that has done anything to benefit the average American.
It's incredible.
In fact, the vast majority of the crap they spew has done nothing but hurt the average American.
All they care about is power. All they care about is power. I'm telling you, nothing else matters. It's all about power, and it's sickening. And they go on to say that these groups, various groups of people, are going to be hurt when if the legislature comes back and they amend our current law requiring ballots to be in hand by the voting folks in our counties that administer that, circuit clerk, the elections commissioners, and so forth, by Election Day. And they say this is going to hurt active duty military personnel, senior citizens. They're always doing that, aren't they? Trying to tug at your emotions and not trying to use logic. No logic ever.
And they wonder why the Democrat Party is approaching single-digit approval
That's
from
true.
men.
That is absolutely true. Donnie from Pine County on the C Spire text line. That's 601-879-4395. It's wide open. He says the children may be U.S. citizens, but the parents aren't. Keep the children and deport the parents, and I bet they will stay away. I wouldn't be surprised if that's not part of the plan there, Donnie. I think you're going to see some more of that. Also on the C Spire text line, the Founding Fathers never envisioned the speed and ease of travel for human beings. This should have been the point they should have tried to point out to SCOTUS. Well, I think that's true. I agree with that. But again, it gets down to the words in the document and how the Supreme Court rules on that. And that's when you get into the philosophical aspect of the Supreme Court and how it conducts its business and how the justices form decisions, write opinions, and so forth. But I get it. But I don't think the founders envisioned, I'm going to say it again, that we would have a duly elected president who's taken an oath and just ignores our laws concerning the sovereignty of the country. That's what they never envisioned. That wouldn't be an issue.
That. You remember he sent the forklift out there to lift up the barbed wire so the illegals could just invade like an invading army?
That's exactly. He facilitated it. That's
because
treason.
The Democrat Party and every stinking Democrat politician on the face of this planet cares more about a rock out in the edge of the solar system than they do about the American citizens.
No doubt. And Darren in Jackson points out, I didn't get to this one, but you're right, Darren. The Supreme Court delivered 2 massive Second Amendment victories, striking down an Hawaiian affirmative consent law for concealed carry and unanimously narrowing a federal ban on firearm possession by marijuana users. I agree. Those were victories for the Second Amendment. Man, so also we got Mo says, service members can request an absentee ballot 45 days before the election. I did it many times. You're right, Mose. I saw that as well when I was reading up on this decision. It seems like that's sufficient time. Now, I know the post office is crappy sometimes and often, but that seems like that's enough time. It really does. And so what's another 5 days?
The U.S.
Biden?
Military can set up a Burger King in a foreign country in 48 hours. I'm pretty sure they can get your ballot back in 45 days.
That was true. Tim and McGee says, dang, that was funny, Rhino, about the IQ. Jeff in Carrollton, sounds like Democrats will have to figure out a new way to cheat. Let's see. Why send millions when you run a lot of old folks' homes? Spend millions, I think. And they're talking about this candidate for governor over in Georgia that invested a significant amount of their money into their race. I'm not really sure what the point is. What's the point there, Rhino? I'm not sure. Let's see here. Ban any travel visas to pregnant women more than 18 weeks gestation. I think the problem with that is, how do you go about collecting that information? That opens up a whole new can of worms. No doubt about that. And it's a problem that needs to be addressed, in my view, by the Congress. But then, of course, that requires amending the Constitution, and that's an incredibly high bar, intentionally a high bar. So we'll see where this goes. But that's... that's
one of the things that a lot of the people on the right are upset with Amy Coney Barrett over is some of her decisions in all of these cases and some of her opinions. But if you boil it down, she's really just saying the Supreme Court shouldn't be making laws, the Congress should be making laws.
Totally agree. I absolutely agree. And on that basis, I'm not unhappy about the decision. And, even the president said, look, we accept it. He's not happy about it, but I think he expected it. But he actually did say that. But on the other hand, with respect to the decision...
Wait, so Trump doesn't come out and say, I have a pen and a phone?
No, he didn't say that.
Trump didn't say we're going to find a workaround around the Supreme Court?
Did not.
So he's already better than Biden and Obama.
Or we need to pack the Supreme Court with people that will rule the way we want them to, not in accordance with our law and our Constitution. Yeah, totally incredible. He did not say that, but he is pushing the Congress to get the SAVE Act passed, as he should. It's pretty straightforward, common sense to me.
With nearly 90% of the public saying they want it.
Incredible. Coming right back in the Element Well studio.
Now, come on. Middays with Gerard Gibert.
All right, we are back
on Super Talk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth Studio. We got the big Great American Fair coming up, of course. Great American State Fair, I should say, to celebrate the founding of this nation 250 years ago. However, some states are not participating. That would be Connecticut, Illinois, Maine, Massachusetts, North Carolina, Oregon, Rhode Island, Vermont, Washington, and Pennsylvania. They have confirmed they won't be there.
I think Pennsylvania has to be struck off the list because, if I'm not mistaken, Fetterman and the other senator, I forget his name, have teamed up to set up a booth. Okay.
I know Fetterman was upset with his home state for bowing out and not participating. You're right about that. So I didn't know that he had stepped up, and they're going to have something going on, huh?
Yeah, I mean, they put out a release on the first day of the fair saying they would have something set up.
Okay. Interesting. You know, we got got the World Cup going on over here. Over there in Europe, it's hot, as you know, and there's some 1,300 people across the European continent who have lost their lives, and that is being attributed to the record heat. But, of course, in Paris, they're blaming America. They say because we use too much air conditioning, that consumes fossil fuels, and that's contributing to climate change, and that's why it's hot in Paris and across Europe. That's their rationale. That's their logic.
It couldn't possibly be the 24 nuclear plants they've shut down to try to go green, so now they don't have enough energy to even run the AC.
Totally true. It's frowned upon, as you know, in woke France and other parts of Europe.
They still believe the old wives' tale that if you experience a degree or a temperature change more than 10 degrees, you're going to get sick.
Didn't know that.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, man. So it's really incredible that this country of France is blaming the United States for this heat wave that they're experiencing specifically because we use air conditioning. France has been historically resistant to the use of air conditioning. Less than a quarter of the households, I believe, actually have air conditioning in France. Now, it's a fairly moderate climate. It's not as necessary as it is certainly in the southern region of the United States, where it's hot for an extended period of time, and it's pretty critical to our economy, wouldn't you say, as well? It's not just a matter of comfort, but when you consider that our economy is largely a services economy, and many of those services are produced inside air conditioning, whether it's your house or your office, etc. That's been a pretty good invention overall, I would say. Now, something we should point out is that air conditioning, if I'm not mistaken, is the single largest consumer of electricity. I know it is at the household level. That's the biggest consumer of electricity. But I want to say that accounts for most of the electricity consumption, if I'm not mistaken, in the country and the world. Now, it's as a percentage overall. 12, 15%, something like that, of the total electricity consumed. Something I did some research on many years ago. I'm not sure if that still applies. But certainly, according to the U.S. Department of Energy, 88% of homes in the United States have air conditioning. 66% of those have central systems. 12% of the electricity in U.S. households is attributed to air conditioning, according to the United States Department of Energy. That's about $29 billion of costs. Interesting. That's what the Department of, I'm looking at the website right now, says. Wow. So, big day at the Supreme Court. Rulings are out. Depending on where you stand, some may be received as positive, some may not. I think the president was kind of geared up for the birthright citizenship decision. I think that if you just look at the strict text of the Constitution and your ruling is based on that, unfortunately, I think that was the right decision. We're coming right back after Fox News and SuperTalk News with Representative Jansen Owen. Stay with us. Of MidDays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by the Mississippi Business Journal. Visit msbusinessjournal.com. Scott Coopwood, publisher and president.
Welcome to the show that challenges you to think deeply, and look beyond political posturing. You're listening to MidDays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's hour 2 of MidDays from the Element Wealth Studio. Thanks so much for joining us on this Tuesday, the last and final day of the month of June. Summer is in full swing right now. It is Representative Jansen Owen. He represents District 106 that incorporates Lamar and Pearl River counties. Representative Owen, good to see you. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you, Gerard. Thanks for having me.
You bet.
Can you hear me?
We got you. Got a little background going on there. Yeah, but we got you. So give us an update from your district. Any news of the day that is circulating amongst your constituents? We've been talking this morning about these landmark Supreme Court cases, some of which, of course, have implications in the state of Mississippi. In particular, the court finding that states such as Mississippi, which ban biological males from participating in female sports, those laws are upheld and can stand. I think that's good news for the state of Mississippi.
Yeah, we passed that bill, I think, 2 sessions ago. A lot of help from our Republican women. And, of course, leadership really was successful in pushing that through. I do got to say, I read the last paragraph of that decision, and it was talking about how, I believe it cited University v. Virginia,
yep.
Or United States v. Virginia.
Yeah.
And it's just amazing that paragraph talking about the differences between boys and girls and their athletic abilities and their strength. It's crazy to me that even had to be put into words in a United States Supreme Court decision. Like that actually had to be explained as to why it's a bad idea to put boys into girls' sports.
Well,
but that's the world we live in.
Exactly. Similarly, Representative Owen, was it 2 sessions ago? You guys had to codify what is a woman, right? So we had to do that as well.
We had to define it. Yeah, we had to define what a woman is. It's insane to me, but that's what we have to do, and I'm glad we have a Republican legislature in this state that uses common sense when it comes to stuff, at least like that.
Yeah. Sadly, as you know, there are 27 states, such as including Mississippi, that banned males from competing against females. But there are 23 states that don't, and in fact encourage it, which is even crazier.
Yeah, and then you see these former men or current men pretending to be women who are competing not only like in local sports, but making it to state or national level championships and beating our girls who are competing in sports. I mean, look at the International Olympic community. They themselves have adopted a rule. They recognize on a global level that that's not right. And yet here in the United States, we're actually having to debate this.
Unbelievable. I think that Riley Gaines, probably the most vocal, outspoken figure in this country against this practice. And that all came about when she lost a big swimming contest, the NCAA swimming meet, to a biological male. It was just incredible. And then her I believe her teammate, if I'm not mistaken, or a teammate of the male, was actually forced to witness that male dress and undress in the locker room and has talked about it. So crazy stuff in this country that we're even here.
I think that one guy placed, 75th when he was competing against men?
Exactly right. Was kind of a has-been, so to speak. All right, so we got laws going into effect tomorrow, July 1, stuff you guys passed in this past session. What do you think? We did kind of a rundown of those yesterday on the program. What comes to mind that you think is something that is good for Mississippi that goes into effect tomorrow?
Well, I know with Senator Jeremy England, I worked with him on the death penalty bill for child sexual predators. If an individual rapes a child 12 and under, we brought back the death penalties for those horrible criminals. I know that was a huge agenda item, state-level agenda item for President Trump's administration. We talked about it at the White House when we visited last year. I was proud to see that pass. I'm interested to see that incorporated, how prosecutors and investigators utilize that. I think that is a good tool for their belt moving forward, particularly in settlement negotiations, or sometimes maybe they just want to move forward with the penalty. So I was glad to work with Senator England on getting that one passed into law. And then we increased the mandatory minimum for sexual battery crimes. And then, of course, the abortion restrictions that Representative Hurst worked on is going to affect on the 1st.
Yeah. Of course, big-time teacher pay raises go into effect as well, $2,000 for public school teachers, assistants, CTE instructors, and then another $2,000 on top of that for special needs teachers. So that is an increase to the compensation of our educators. And then I think the base student cost, if I'm not mistaken, also got a bump, right? It's above $7,000 now.
That's correct. I believe it's
like
it is 7,000.
Yeah, I think it's 7,200 if I'm not mistaken. Is the base student cost up a couple $100 or so. So that goes into effect. Go ahead.
Yeah, we funded this raise through the formula like it should be.
Yeah.
So traditionally, back when MAEP was in place and it was not fully funded, we would fund the first year outside of the formula. But because we have a fully funded student funding formula, that would be pointless. So we included it in the whole formula.
Yep. And then, of course, we've also made it illegal to be present in this state if you are here illegally. So it essentially criminalizes illegal immigration in the state of Mississippi. Explain how that changes things for us, Representative Owen.
Well, currently it's, if we find somebody that is coming to the country to a point of entry illegally, the only recourse is to call ICE and put an ICE hold on them. And a lot of local governments don't have, they don't hold them or whatnot based on that. With this situation now, they can charge them with a state level crime. So there's a reason to hold them in while ICE is waiting to come get them. It also charges or allows enhancements on crimes So if you're an illegal immigrant and you commit a crime, you get extra time for being here illegally.
Okay, that makes sense. I wasn't aware of that.
And that is, yeah, that's Senator Hill's work. I got to give her kudos to that. She's been trying to push that bill for several years, and I was glad to see her get it across the finish line.
Yeah, I think it makes sense. So if nothing else, hopefully it serves as a deterrent for illegal entry or entry by illegals into our state. The word will get out when somebody gets arrested and they get sentenced, and there's an enhanced sentencing here for more time. That'll get out. Maybe that'll serve as a deterrent. Election integrity. Senator Jeremy England with the SHIELD Act, that also goes into effect. However, there's a little bit of a hiccup there, as you're aware, where a federal judge has said, yeah, you states, you can't use the federal SAVE database, which is the essence of this legislation, to determine that a person is an American citizen before we register them to vote. Or even if those are registered, we're going to do a cross-check to make sure, yeah, you're a citizen to stay on the rolls.
Yeah, I thought that was an interestingly crazy ruling. The state level governments use federal databases for things from medical information to driver's license information. So it's not new for states to access federal information systems.
Yeah.
So that ruling was interesting to me. But I think this is an important point to make as to why we need to do something on the federal level to pass the Federal SAVE Act, because that would resolve that issue if Congress would get it together on that.
Yeah, the SHIELD Act is in essence a state version of the SAVE Act, the Federal SAVE Act, in many respects. And of course, we also use federal databases for income and eligibility tests for the various welfare programs. This makes no sense. This is inconsistent in my view. That this happened. We got a break right now. Can you hang around? We can talk about your political future and some other legislative matters. You good? You got to go.
Yes, sir. I'm good.
All right. We got Representative Jansen Owen on the line with us. We're coming right back.
Jaded you
on the and now the talk that keeps Mississippi talking.
Now on to the real part.
Dynamite
on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Back with you from the Element Wealth Studio. We're visiting with Representative Jansen Owen. He serves, of course, in the Mississippi House. District 106 is his. That includes Lamar and Pearl River County. So, Representative Owen, something else concerning our elections that also goes into effect tomorrow, July 1. And that is the ending of the use of the sealed envelopes in absentee voting. So when you show up in person to vote absentee at your circuit clerk's office, consistent with the way we handle it on Election Day, you'll mark that ballot and it will be scanned in the optical scanner when the ballot is cast, and then those are tallied in accordance with our law on election night. Our law requires that the polls have to be closed before we start pulling in the absentee ballots. I got to tell you, I think this is really good, and here's why. I've always had concerns about, and I've talked to Secretary of State Michael Watson about this, that our prior practice before this law, you go fill out your ballot and you put it in your envelope, you sign it, circuit clerk or somebody in the circuit clerk's office just takes it, sticks it in a box. I'm not really sure where those boxes go, but I've always been concerned with, we have tornadoes in Mississippi and floods and natural disasters, or somebody could just walk out with a box. I mean, all kinds of problems could happen between that time and Election Day, whereas when they're stored electronically, you can implement controls to ensure that vote is protected and counts on Election Day. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it's really similar to how we're doing it now, because the clerks are still supposed at the end of the night lock the ballots, because we do paper ballots now.
That's right.
So
yep.
They're supposed to lock the machine and the ballots up. Every clerk's office has a safe, and they're supposed to lock it up along with the ballots they receive by mail. What I like about it is just ease on voters. I mean, coming in, voting in person in front of your circuit clerk, having to put it in the envelope, and then your ballot potentially being rejected if you didn't sign across the flap.
Yeah.
If you're going into your government institution to your elected official and voting, you should be able to think, okay, I know my ballot's going to count.
Yes. Yeah.
I can understand that if you're mailing it in, but if you're going in, you're trusting your government to count your ballot. So I like that we no longer have to worry about in-person people losing their vote because of some silly error in the clerk's office.
I think it's a good move. So this goes into effect, so the folks will know, effective tomorrow. We made some changes to the public employees retirement system. I dare say not sufficient to fully stabilize the fund and put a bow on it and say we're done, but I think it's moving in the right directions. One of those is the return to work rules that allow a person to return to work and earn up to 80% of the salary for that position. Previously, it was 50%. It was somewhat restrictive, and you had to wait 90 days, as I recall. Now you only have to wait 30 days to get back to work. So that situation is improved.
Yeah, I agree. Do you still hear me?
We got you. Yeah, we got you.
Okay, perfect.
Yep.
There we go. Yeah, I mean, I think that, we have a shortage of teachers. We have a shortage of police officers. I think that allowing this return to work rule come into place, I think that'll let us keep these professionals that we're losing. It'll encourage them to stay in those fields a little longer. Particularly since we have less government employees now, we have less people wanting to commit to public service because of the discrepancy in pay between Mississippi and other states.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to see us move forward on that.
Now, I know that historically you have, of course, worked in the Mississippi House to enact legislation that would implement education freedom, school choice programs. The Speaker has championed this as well. Last week, you probably know it, Neshoba, he said we ain't done. That we're gonna give this another look, and he said he's not afraid to deal with that issue. What do you think about that?
The Speaker's been committed to that issue for a long time. I've been there with him. I agree that is coming. Education freedom, parental freedom is coming to Mississippi. I don't think I'll be in the legislature to see it, but I do think in the coming administration that we'll see it happen.
A great segue. You have decided you're not going to run for re-election, but rather you are seeking the office of district attorney in your locale. Tell us about that.
That is correct. I'm running for, hold on just a second.
We got you.
Okay, do you hear me?
Yeah, we got you.
Okay. Yeah, I am. I did decide that, I needed to go do something different. When I first ran for the legislature, I said I would do it for 2 terms. I didn't want to be there any longer than that. And I was very called to do this. We have a great team at the district attorney's office in the 15th district. I'm passionate about being in the courtroom, and I'm passionate about the laws we've passed and doing what I can to enforce those laws in the DA's office.
Got it. So, speaking of you staying there for 2 terms, do you have any thoughts about potentially term limiting members of the legislature in the state of Mississippi. We of course have term limits for governor and lieutenant governor. As far as I'm aware, virtually every other office is not term limited.
I've always been a supporter of term limits, and across all facets of government, particularly the legislature. I do think we are too dependent on seniority as opposed to intelligence and the ability to accomplish things.
Yeah.
So I do hope one day we might can see that happen.
I actually agree with you on that, because it's certainly the fact that it seems like that those who get the most power, right, committee chairpersons' assignments and so forth, and then the committees that they are in charge of, in general, is based on tenure. It's not really based as much on experience or qualifications or familiarity, proficiency in the subject matter, but just how long you've been there.
Right. And the same way in D.C.
Worse in D.C.
Well, they're doing it up there.
Worse in D.C.
Yeah.
And that's mainly because it seems like everybody in the U.S. Senate's 80 years old or more. But I don't know what the average age is.
I think there was an article that just...
Go ahead.
There was an article that just ran last week talking about the age gap or the age discrepancy in the Mississippi legislature. I mean, I'm one of the youngest members, and I think the average age of the Mississippi legislature is in the high 60s, I think is what the article said.
Gotcha. And I've heard some that have said, well, yeah, I'm not for term limits because that means I'd have to leave and somebody less experienced than me would come in. Well, how did you get there? You got there without any experience. I just find that to be kind of a weak argument.
Everybody starts somewhere.
Exactly. So, in my industry, it was a little upside down relative to that. It's like, well, do you want that 60-year-old person over there installing this system, or do you want that 20-something, right, who knows more about it? I mean, it's kind of upside down. Doesn't mean I'm not taking a shot here. People my age, doesn't mean that they're not capable or qualified, but in general, as you age, you're just less likely to embrace new stuff. That's just human nature, I think. But you need to.
Yeah.
I think that's
we have a lot, and I mean, I do got to say, a lot of our older members are some of the hardest working members.
No doubt. No doubt.
That I know.
100%. And great people and do great work. It's not trying to be disparaging on them whatsoever. But I don't know. Sometimes you need to rotate the crops, as they say.
Yeah.
So how's the campaign going?
Florida's a good example of how they change so often.
Yeah, you're right. How's the campaign going for DA?
It's good. Four counties is a lot. I didn't realize it when I qualified or announced. But I'm excited to meet the new people of the 15th district. I'm going to work my butt off, and luckily I have a year to do it.
Yeah. Well, you certainly have the credentials for it. And is this a decision you made because you just felt like 8 years was enough in the legislature, or you said you had a calling, you felt like this was a position that you're well suited for?
Well, I've always thought about DA as doing something in the future. I was to the point to where, regardless of what happened, I was not going to run for the legislature again. Okay. And then my incumbent district attorney, a great guy, served the people well in this district. He made the decision to run or to not run again, and I felt like that was, the sign, and that the time was right for me to throw my hat in the ring and move towards that.
Gotcha. Representative Jansen Owen, House District 106, has been our guest. Appreciate it, Representative Owen. Good to see you. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks, Gerard. I appreciate you.
You bet. We're coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
Middays with Gerard Gibert.
It is on
SuperTalk, Mississippi.
distance in your eyes. Oh no, I've said too much. I set it up. That's me in the corner.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Well studio. That's the iconic tune by R.E.M. Losing My Religion. So the state of Florida has gotten some national attention because Governor Ron DeSantis just signed his 8th and final budget of his tenure yesterday into law. And the state is going to spend a little bit less this year than last year. Now, you know, as always, Rhino, when you see this, you got to scratch your head a little bit, say, well, how did they do that? So what happened? He line item vetoed $800 million of local projects. This happens in Mississippi. You know that. Members of the legislature, throughout the year, and especially during the session, they get bombarded with requests from local governments in their constituencies that want the state to send them money for various purposes. I mean, literally, you know this, Rhino, everything from, I remember one a couple of years ago, was like a clock tower in, I can't remember the town. It was like $50,000 or something for a clock tower. And sidewalks, you know, and bike trails, and oh God, just a laundry list of stuff. Well, Governor DeSantis says, no. $810 million. Now, Florida's a big state with considerably more people than we have here, about 7 times more people than we have in Mississippi. $810 million. He just said, we're not going to do it. The other thing is they've been busy using their money, their cash reserves, much of which was provided by the federal government during COVID, to pay down debt. So their interest cost is down. And then there's also a bit of a accounting sleight of the hand you got to consider as well, where they're transferring money out of some cash reserves, again, the result of federal largesse, to, in Florida, the Department of Corrections. So they appropriated a certain amount, which wasn't enough. Then they transferred from these cash reserve funds. They actually increased spending on education, like we did here in Mississippi. Increased spending. But the big deal, and they issued, by the way, teacher pay raises as well. In Mississippi, it was a couple $100 million. In Florida, $1.5 billion. So they actually increased spending in that category, education, which in virtually every state is the biggest spending category, including here in the Mississippi. In the state of Mississippi, it represents about 53% of general fund spending. But I think this is consistent with most of the southern states that are under Republican control. They have been far more fiscally and financially responsible, and they've built up, just as we have in Mississippi, tidy reserves, kept spending below revenue and producing surpluses. That's all good news. Imagine if the federal government operated that way, how much better things would be, because that is certainly not the case. On track to generate a $1.9 trillion deficit this year. It will balloon to over $2 trillion next year, and according to the Congressional Budget Office, their estimates, and they've been pretty spot on, I must say, it's going to stay above $2 trillion for quite some time of deficits. And that just means we keep lapping on to our debt. Not a good thing. Social Security, that's something we've talked about on this program before. Senator Bill Cassidy says this is the number one issue confronting the Congress, lawmakers in Washington. I agree with him. And, of course, Cassidy's out. He did not win his party's primary for re-election to the United States Senate. I actually think, Rhino, this is why he's being very vocal about this contentious issue, because generally speaking, even the mere mention of it is a political liability. And what will happen is Democrats will immediately say, they're cutting your Social Security. No, they're trying to fix it so that the benefits continue to flow as promised. So Cassidy says he's, quote, working on a consensus for his proposed reforms to address the insolvency, and that is scheduled to come into play, insolvency that is, in 2032. At that point, Social Security will only be able to cover 78% of its scheduled payments. So that is something that is right around the corner. Well, what he wants to do, I got to think about this one. He wants to invest $1.5 trillion in an investment fund that's separate from Social Security's trust fund over a 5-year period. So $300 billion over 5 years. I can't find anywhere the explanation of where's this money coming from? We're just going to print this and go invest it? Now, I'm for allowing Social Security to invest in private securities, investments, as does our public employees retirement system and every other state, county, city, other retirement system. It's Social Security, however, that is not allowed to invest the money we send to Washington in anything but one security, one investment, and that's Treasury securities, special issue Treasury securities from the United States government, from the Treasury, and it generates about 3.5% interest that goes towards benefit payments. Whereas the average return on investment at the state level across the country is about 8%. In fact, our public employees retirement system in Mississippi, I just found out, experienced a 17.5% return on investment over the past fiscal year. That's good news for the program. That's largely because of their investments in the high-flying technology stocks. They account for the top 10 holdings of equities by the public employees retirement system in Mississippi are AI-related and data center-related technology holdings. Yet we have some people here that want to ban it. So I guess if we're going to ban or have kind of denounced artificial intelligence and data centers, are we going to prevent the public employees retirement system from investing in these companies? Because that means we taxpayers would be on the hook for even more of the public employees retirement system. So, yeah, the last I checked, Mississippi PERS has about...
Wait, so you're telling me it's short-sighted to call AI sinister?
Correct. NVIDIA, you know who those guys are. They make the hardware that is primarily used these days. Used to be used for video games, graphics processing units. Turns out they work pretty good on artificial intelligence processing. A high-flying company, stock through the roof. I mean, it's an incredible American success story. The state of Mississippi's public employees retirement system owns $550 million of NVIDIA. They own Microsoft, a bunch. Apple, Google, Meta, Tesla, Oracle. You don't say. Right. Top 10 holdings. I looked it up the other day. PERS publishes it. It's not a secret. You have the right to know how PERS invests the money that flows through the system. And, in fact, the returns received on those investments, that's what's used to pay benefits. It doesn't work without that. And even in spite of the fact that we generated a 17% return, which is incredible, honestly. That's far above the target of, 7.5%, I think. That's the target is set by the PERS board, and I think maybe even embedded in legislation now. I can't remember if that got through or not, but It's the target return on investment rate, and the fund is to be managed according to that. And the actuaries also project and evaluate the financial soundness of the program based on that target investment return rate. But man, and I got to tell you, it was State Treasurer David McRae that shared this news with me last week over at Neshoba, because I don't think it's been published yet. The 17.5% return. Did it make it into law?
State statute gives the PERS Board of Trustees the authority and responsibility to set the rate.
Okay, so they're the ones that set the target, and that's what actuaries use then to project the fund's stability. We're coming right back in the Element Wealth studio. It's Christopher Green, law professor at 12:05.
Up a missing.
You know what that means.
Middays with Gerard Gibert.
We'll do it live
On SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Now, when I was a young boy, at the age of 5, my mother said I was gonna be the greatest man alive. But now I'm a man.
We're back with you in the Element Wealth studio. So on the C Spire text line, Casey from Ocean Springs sent an article from Ed Week, and basically there's a headline here. It says, it's a complicated time, Education Week, the name of this journal. It's a complicated time for teachers to celebrate America's 250th anniversary. Lessons focused on the evolution of founding principles, but often sidestep emergent questions about presidential authority. Oh, my gosh. So they're having a hard time sharing, teaching, educating our young people about the founding principles of this country because they don't like the president, essentially. I think that's the takeaway, isn't it?
I mean, that's the way it boils down in just about every poll asking about your pride in the country of in the United States of America itself. Democrats are only ever proud to be American when a Democrat is in the Oval Office.
That is true. And the polls show that.
Whereas Republicans are proud to be American no matter who's in the Oval Office.
And I think we're going to see true stripes, honestly, this weekend, July 4th, the 250th, which is significant, of course. We're going to see the true stripes. I remember 50 years ago, the 200th, 1976. But I don't remember the country being so torn apart, and I don't remember people in general not being proud to be an American. But that seems to almost have overtaken big swaths of the Democrat Party. It's unbelievable. So
it's because big swaths of the Democrat Party aren't American.
That's exactly right. And don't believe this country is exceptional. Who could forget Barack Obama, who denounced the idea that this country is exceptional and went on the so-called apology tour right after he got elected and going around bowing and stuff like that. Contrast that, I've talked about this many times, to the current president. I'll never forget the G7 summit over there. I believe it was in Brussels, and he found himself behind all the other leaders of the EU and so forth that are part of that meeting when they were walking between venues, and he looked up and straightened his tie and pushed his coat back, held his head back, and shouldered his way to the front, which is where the American president should be. Not Barack Obama running around bowing to everybody.
Or wandering off on his own like Biden.
Oh, exactly. Over in Europe, right, where Italian President Meloni had to go direct him in the right direction there, kind of shoulder him in the right direction. But it always felt like Barack Obama was like embarrassed for America. And didn't his wife, Michelle, famously say, for the first time in my life, I'm actually proud to be an American? Like, well, get the hell out then. That's unbelievable. A JFK Middle School in Massachusetts. This is incredible, guys. Held an anti-ICE protest, a middle school, to campaign against Citizens Bank, because Citizens Bank works with ICE. And the schools are teaching our kids to become radical left-wing activists, and they're calling for the debanking of conservatives. And I'm looking at the video. This really is incredible, Rhino. These are children in front of the bank. You can see the building with the bank's signage in the background. They're standing out in front of a bank. These are middle schoolers holding signs, protesting the bank because it somehow deals in some Treasury services with immigration and customs enforcement. It's just unbelievable. So you've got teachers, this is in Northampton, Massachusetts, at a middle school, that schedule and conduct a field trip to a bank to protest ICE? What in the wide world of sports is going on in this country, man? Just incredible. Absolutely incredible. Oh, man. Robert from Jackson says, do you think PERS is overinvested? I think they pay 7 or 8 firms for investment. No, they pay 1. And to my knowledge, I do not think, I don't know what you mean by overinvested. I mean, if you mean, Robert, as far as the allocation of capital, I'm not going to pretend to outsmart the wealth managers that are in the business of managing big portfolios such as Mississippi's PERS and other state retirement systems as well. I think last I looked, it's got about $34 billion in it. No, I think they do a heck of a job, honestly. And I still think that their allocation seems to be paying off for Mississippians. So, we're going to take a break right now. Coming right back with law professor Christopher Green. Stay with us.
Get ready to go beyond the headlines and join a meaningful conversation with people from around the state. Hello? You're listening to MidDays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's hour 3, the afternoon portion of MidDays. We're coming at you, of course, from the Element Wealth Studio. Thanks so much for joining us. It's our pleasure to welcome now Christopher Green from the Ohio State University. He's the Assistant Director of the Chase Center for Civics, Culture, and Society at Ohio State. Professor, good to see you, sir. Thanks for coming on.
Good to see you.
All right, so the Supreme Court, man, they've been shelling them out the last couple of days. It's been busy. We expected this, of course, because we weren't seeing any action on some of these high-profile cases over the last few weeks. You sort of felt like it was going to all swing out there in these final couple of days, and that's exactly what we got starting yesterday, with a ruling that says, hey, yeah, it's okay if states consider ballots received after Election Day. Of course, you know that our Secretary of State, Michael Watson, was the defendant in this case, the Republican National Committee, the plaintiff. I'm told by my smart lawyer friends in Mississippi, Professor, that they picked Mississippi because they wanted it to be heard in the, I believe, the 5th Federal District here. And they thought it would be the Fifth
Circuit.
Fifth Circuit. Okay, thank you. So Fifth Circuit, feeling like they'd be friendlier to their position, got all the way up to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court basically, I think what they said here, Professor, correct me if I'm wrong, that, hey, there's really nothing in the Constitution at the federal level or no federal law that prevents this, so you states can handle this however you want. Your take, sir.
Yeah, that's right. So you have this word election day. And really, I mean, so it's a close decision, 5-4, and both the majority and the dissent basically say we have this word, the day of election. Does that mean the day where the voters are putting the votes, into the process, or does it mean the day on which the state kind of assembles the votes? They don't have to count them, but at least have them all together. And really, both the majority and the dissent point out a lot of weird things with the other ones reading. So a bunch of stuff about how we treated military ballots during the Civil War. There's a statute now that allows military ballots to come in. And basically, you look at both sides, you're like, I don't know, there's like 3 or 4 really awkward things about either reading. So essentially what they're doing is kind of weighing, well, you can't tell a smooth story that makes sense of all the data. So you've got to kind of weigh, well, which of these awkwardnesses seems more important. This is clearly going to generally benefit the urban areas where you've got kind of urban Democratic machines generally who can pile up lots more absentee ballots. Mississippi, they have more stringent rules about postmarking than some places. I mean, California, they got just crazy stuff going on. You've got to show up and just write the election day on it. And they say, oh, I guess this was put into the system on that day that the date says. So in terms of so lots of states allow a few days after election day to receive it.
Yeah.
But there really aren't that many that are super loosey-goosey the way California tends to be, which I think is really pretty disturbing. But those are for local elections, LA mayor, that kind of thing. Congress could step in and do this. Could say, look, election day means the day you actually get everything together. They could put a lot more requirements about collecting, using machines that are uniform, using, counting it very quickly. Florida, we had that huge debacle in 2000. But they've gotten to a system that's unbelievably quick, kind of the state of the art. Congress could say, "Hey, look, you gotta do it for federal elections. You got to do it the way Florida's doing it." But they haven't been able to get Congress to do that. I mean, it's not even the top 50 things that Congress really needs to get together and do, but it's on the list. Probably the top 100, I think.
Yeah, and in California, and we talked about it on the show the last couple of days, and there's 6 other states. I think where this really becomes a big problem is in those 7 states that conduct their elections through mass mail out. They send a ballot to everybody on their voter rolls, whether they're a valid voter or not. They're getting a ballot, and of course that means that all the ballots are coming in for the most part via mail-in. And some of those states, they don't even have precincts and election day, and you go to the polls and stuff. It's just all mail. So the chance of receiving ballots, I guess, after election day has increased just because of the sheer volume of ballots. But I want to clarify something. This is something Congress could address, right, in statute from a federal election perspective.
They could and should. I mean, it's in terms of just the reliability of elections. Doing so many things absentee is got big costs. Even if they do it honestly, the fact that it could be manipulated is a big problem. So in-person voting has a lot of big advantages. And again, I mean, the Florida system in terms of getting it done quickly. I mean, even if you have it in person, the fact that you're counting for such a long time, there's really no reason to have that, and it's much less trustworthy. And it's an important part of our legitimacy of our system. We need to believe that we've got people who are getting picked who are going to promote the interests of everybody. And if we don't have that, we can have a real problem with just keeping together kind of Team America, so to speak.
Florida is unique in that, not unique, but certainly compared to other states, in that it allows the counting of its absentee and mail-in ballots upon receipt. other states, such as the state of Mississippi. So when Election Day rolls around, they pretty much already got them accounted for. They just need to add the in-person ballots, and boom, they got final results. In Mississippi, for example, we don't have a huge number of voters that vote absentee relative to the total amount of ballots cast. We don't allow the counting to start until the polls close on Election Day.
Yes, you don't find out how many of them.
Exactly.
Like, oh, well, who knows how many military people? Well, I mean, we've got certain number of military families. You have a pretty good sense, but it's just in a big question mark box until you're like, okay, now we find out how many there are. But I mean, I think there's no reason you can't say okay, like what's the order of magnitude? Is this 1% of the ballots? Is it 0.1%? Is it 10%? Is it 20%? Knowing things like that and having transparency about it, I don't see any reason not to be transparent about that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And, of course, the president, he's doubled down on pushing the Senate in particular to get the SAVE Act passed to address some of these issues. And one provision in that is to ban this mass mail-out, which occurs in 7 states, which I think triggers the vast majority of all the election anomalies comes from that. There's just ballots floating around all over the place. And that's just different.
Yep. Time, place, and manner. You can do it at the federal level.
Okay.
I mean, some of the provisions, like saying non-citizens can't vote, and if states want to allow non-citizens to vote, there's a reasonably strong argument from tradition that they can do it. That the states themselves get to decide what their electorate is, and if they want to include people outside their state.
Okay.
It would be a little weird, but in terms of the kind of historic view of state autonomy, there's a pretty strong argument they could allow anybody to vote. There's no straight 14th Amendment right to vote. That's a 15th Amendment thing, and if it's not racial, then states can do it. So I would say this kind of stuff, the time, place, and manner about getting the counting stuff happening at the right time, that's much more obviously constitutional than some of the citizenship. Let's
pivot to the birthright citizenship issue. This is one that, to me, Professor, it seems like that the difference in time in the time period and the dynamics of when our framers wrote this and what is kind of going on today in our country really shows that maybe if they'd have known that was coming, they'd have rethought that provision. I'm totally speculating there. I don't think they intended it to be used and abused the way it is, but it looks like the Supreme Court again went with the language in law, right?
That's right. So the long tradition. I mean, basically, the majority sees. So it was an interesting split. Again, it was 5-4 about the Constitution. It was 6-3 about the statute. So Justice Kavanaugh said, "Well, I think the president isn't allowed to do this because Congress has embraced elements of kind of a limited reading of subject to the jurisdiction." The exclusion. But if Congress wanted to change their mind, he would have been okay. Majority wouldn't, but they only need one more vote to get that constitutional holding. But basically, at the founding, it takes months to get back and forth from Europe to America. By the 14th Amendment, you got steam power, so it's much quicker. But you don't have short stays. You can't just fly and have a baby and fly back. So the idea of temporary sojourns, they had cases of temporary sojourns in one important state case, and there's just a question about the extent to which it's incorporated into the 14th Amendment. One thing that's interesting, there's Kavanaugh.
Professor, hang on. We got a break. We'll come back. We'll continue this discussion. We got Professor Christopher Green on the line. Coming right back.
At Fillmore Buick GM.
Check it out. Let's do this.
The talk that keeps Mississippi talking. Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Let's get on with it.
On SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Make a one man weep, make another man sing.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth Studio. Law professor Christopher Green of The Ohio State University serves as the assistant director of the Chase Center for Civics, Culture, and Society. Our guest doing a rundown of these really flurry of high-profile Supreme Court cases. All the decisions issued in the last couple of days have really dominating the news cycle, Professor. So we were talking about the birthright citizenship case. You know, the president seemed to take this in stride, honestly. I think he expected it. And this is something that we would have to amend the Constitution to change, correct?
Yeah, amend the Constitution or get a fifth vote on the Supreme Court. So you'd have to change one of the justices to change their interpretation of it. But yeah, it's a long tradition, and there's long questions. I mean, for a long time, we have had these issues about what exactly is the relationship of the American constitutional system and England. So you think yesterday, the president has this removal power. Well, that's understood to be executive power, which the general way you get to there is to say, well, executive power is everything the British monarch could do, minus the stuff in Article 1, Section 8 given to Congress. Well, if the British monarch is the model for the president, kind of modulo Article 1 stuff, it does make sense to think, well, the way that the English people thought of themselves is probably going to be, to some extent, a model for how the American people. Again, English, but I mean, there are differences. So English people thought of themselves as subjects, not as citizens. So there's a bunch of stuff about the 1608 case, the great Calvin's case, right after James comes in, and the relationship of Scotland and England is complicated, but it's discussed in terms of subjecthood. So some people say, well, subjecthood in England in 1608 is the same as that becomes citizenship. But the dissents at the court say, no, this is very different. There were no citizens in England. If you're a citizen in England, you're a citizen of London. You're a citizen of a city.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of I find it utterly fascinating questions about where exactly do these lines go? How do you extrapolate the English experience into a situation that is similar in a lot of ways, but different in some very, very important ones. And of course, this is the recent unpleasantness 250 years ago is still getting resolved. What exactly is the relationship of America and England?
Yeah, incredible that's still going on. Just entrenched, I guess, in the dynamic there. Let's talk about the case concerning states that have laws such as Mississippi, which prohibits biological males, as the state defines them, from participating in sports against females. And the Supreme Court said, yep, states that have passed those laws are upheld and they can stand.
That's right. And it's interesting. So it was interesting in the birthright citizenship case, you had 5 justices say this is unconstitutional and 6 say it violated a statute. In the women's sports case, there's actually a statute, Title IX, of course. So women's sports takes off after Title IX gets sports included in 1974, and the Title IX claim against West Virginia loses 9-0. So even the dissenters say, in 1972, when we have the prohibition on sex discrimination by anybody getting federal money, and then 1974, when this gets extended to sports, that does not give transgender women, so men who, biological men want to participate in women's sports, does not cover that. But the dissent said the Constitution does. So it's interesting. They think the Constitution is... Constitution, provision written in 1868, that gives them a benefit, but something in 1974 does not, which is a little funny if you think, my goodness, 1974, Congress had passed the ERA. There's just a lot more material for a kind of progressive attitude towards sex roles. But at the same time, you have cases like 1973, Supreme Court says sex is immutable.
Yeah.
That's why they starts getting the sex discrimination stuff going, is because they say sex is immutable like race. So it is I find like the relationship of the statutory and constitutional issues interesting. They didn't renovate as much as they could have. I'm always wanting to kind of burn things down and start anew. They have this intermediate scrutiny stuff that's it's not complete nonsense, but it's maybe 72% nonsense. They did say it applies to sex segregation. So because you have separate men and women's sports teams, that has to be, quote, substantially related, unquote, to something, quote, important, unquote. But then there's questions about like just high schools for girls or for boys. Does that have to be important? Or if it's a kind of a close call, like, well, maybe this environment will encourage boys and girls to kind of be educated better. Seems like they could have made a lot more room for flexibility in that kind of case, but they didn't. They said separate things for boys and girls got to be important. And then to the extent that we know what that means, it could be putting more constraints on states than maybe we would have thought. But all that is down the road, and they. It was a relatively minimal kind of both of the opinions from today had short majority opinions and then very, very, very long dissents. Some of the concurrences were very, very long. Justice Jackson had a big, long concurrence in one of them, and it's in the birthright citizenship. So it's you see why they were taking so long to do it. And really, some people say, oh, this is artificially late. They're waiting until the end of June. They actually are artificially early. Because if they really took their time and responded back and forth fully, they would take years. But they say, look, we got all these cases. We got to get them done by the end of June. So, time's up, the bell rings, the Jeopardy music ends, and they're like, okay, well, here's what we got. Relatively minimal, straightforward majority opinions, and a whole lot of Sturm und Drang. Justice Alito was a different dissent from Justice Thomas, interestingly, in the birthright citizenship. So he gets much more into the illegality of people, whereas Thomas and Gorsuch, they're much more on like, well, temporary sojourn. People here temporarily but legally. He would say they haven't established a domicile. They very openly haven't established a domicile. But whether or not an illegal entrant can establish a domicile, Thomas and Gorsuch would leave that open. But Alito has a lot more, I think, red meat that the president will look at. It's like, give me more Alitos. But we'll see. He's not retiring. NPR got a really bad mistake. Not their first mistake. It's certainly not. Nina Totenberg makes mistakes about a lot of things, including the Constitution. But a mistake somehow about Alito's retirement. So he's Jan Crawford of Greenberg. You can trust what she said a month or two ago. No retirements during this term. Maybe in the fall, but we'll see.
Yeah. So overall, though, Professor, does it feel like that this court seems to lean more into the concept of federalism and states' rights and states, certainly the majority of the court, and states' ability to set laws as they see fit? I mean, going back to the Roe v. Wade reversal, right? I mean, that's really what the court said is there's nothing at the federal level in the Constitution that guarantees the right to an abortion, that's something that should be determined at the state level.
Oh, that's right. So there's definitely like more flexibility for states, even in the election case. Saying, well, Congress says there's a day of election that lets states do stuff. The spending clause case from last week, I think, could be a much more serious kind of improvement for federalism there, because it says if you're making a deal with states, giving them money in exchange for them saying stuff, that doesn't make a deal with their state's employees. So you can't just sue state's employees just because the state itself takes the money. And in terms of like really putting restraints on the spending power, that could be a really powerful engine for federalism. Not going all the way to say that like Madison is right that there isn't a spending power, but which I think he was right about that. But in terms of like putting limits, the massive influx of federal cash is a real problem for federalism. It has been for 100 years, 150 years maybe. But it's something that you got to get a control with. Devolution, handle things at the most local level that you can. The basic subsidiary question tells you you shouldn't have everything happening in D.C.
Yeah. Well, one thing for sure is our system is working as designed. Whether or not you agree with the rulings, this is the way it was set up, and it's still playing out today. Always good talking to you, Professor Christopher Green from the Ohio State University. Thanks for coming on, Professor. Appreciate it.
Good to talk to you, Gerard.
Yeah, we're coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
From the with Gerard Gibert.
Welcome to our show.
On SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Okay, now you have a good one.
Some of y'all never been down south too much. I'm gonna tell you a little story so that you'll understand what I'm talking about. Down there we have a plant that grows out in the woods and the fields. And it looks something like a turnip green. And everybody calls it poke salad. Now that's poke salad.
The king himself there. Little poke salad. Poke Salad Annie, I believe the name of the tune, right? So we are back with you in the Element Wealth studio. Appreciate Christopher Green, law professor, and of course used to be at the University of Mississippi, now at Ohio State, and the assistant director of the Chase Center for Civics, Culture, and Society, for weighing in on all the various Supreme Court cases. Appreciate that. Man, it's this is going to go down in history, I think, Rhino. So many high-profile cases sort of concentrated in a short period of time. And I guess on the one side, I feel like the system's working. This is the way it was designed. May not agree with the rulings. I think for the most part, the Supreme Court got it right. Honestly, I am pleased that they are allowing federalism, states' rights, to prevail. That's the way the founders intended it for it to be. Not supposed to be a government where everything is controlled by Washington. In fact, it specifically says, do our founding documents, hey, if it ain't in here, it belongs to the states. I mean, that's the very straightforward, simple way to describe.
That's the 10th Amendment.
That's it. So don't go crazy here and override states' rights to govern as they see fit. That's why we have 50 of them. And it was a brilliant framework, a brilliant architecture, a brilliant design. And it still stands today. It feels kind of fitting that we're approaching Independence Day and the 250th birthday of this great country while our system is working. Now, the Democrats ain't happy. They don't like that system. They want
to really been out of shape over the Supreme Court saying that, yes, the executive branch has control over the executive branch.
Didn't even get to that one with the professor, but let's tell the folks about that. Essentially, what they said did the Supreme Court is that, this administrative state, the so-called swamp, this wide range of agencies, all of whom have expansive management, can't just go acting on their own, that they are accountable to the Congress and to the commander-in-chief, to the president, to the executive branch. They are executive branch agencies, but Congress makes laws. The president signs those measures into law. And then it's the agency's responsibility to discharge those laws, not make them. And the Democrats are all mad about that because, let's be honest, most of what Joe Biden got done, and to a great extent Barack Obama, was all done through executive decree. And I'll be honest, there have been some situations where I felt like this president maybe overstepped that a little bit. But in many cases, that was to get things back on the track from the craziness that we had unfold under the Biden term, the Biden 4 years. But you're right. The Democrats are mad because they see this as a way to execute their agenda, to advance their agenda without the need for that nuisance Congress, Constitution, right, and president. Yeah, we can just get whomever we want in these agencies. And by the way, as you know, it's virtually impossible to fire them. But no, the Supreme Court said, nope, president's in charge. And the rationale is because the people elect the president. We elect him.
But the Democrats don't like it because the Democrats have been filling roles in government positions for decades now and never leave.
Absolutely correct.
So they're trying to spin it like, oh, well, the next time a Democrat gets in office, they'll just replace all the ones the Republicans put in with. They're already there.
Exactly.
This literally just balanced the scales to where Republicans, when they get elected, can put people that think and act like them in positions of power.
100%.
Instead of having to rely on worthless Democrats in those positions of power to do what's actually good for the country.
That's exactly
because it's been proven time and time again, Democrats don't give a rip about this country.
No, they give a rip about their agenda and their power and their spoils and their enrichment, but really not about what's in the best interest of the country. And the fact, in my view, that they've gone off the rails in so many crazy areas, whether it's climate change or gender, crazy gender ideology, race, all the above, and attacking the private sector, private enterprise, attacking profit, wealth, success, all the above. It's all because of their pursuit of power, no doubt, and their personal enrichment. So I give you a case in point. You may have seen where Apple announced, this increase in the price of memory. This is unprecedented, honestly. Necessitates us increasing the price of the machines we make that include this memory, DRAM. And AOC now is calling for Apple to be broken up. And you know who would lose if that happens? We consumers. But they don't care about that. And really can't do the second order thinking to understand and figure that out. So it's not unusual for a company to respond to the price of inputs with the price of the output. That's pretty straightforward.
The only thing AOC accomplished in her asinine bloviating was to prove that a degree from Boston University in economics is worth about a pound of manure.
Boy, ain't that the case. No doubt about it. And that's exactly what happened there. But she is in fact calling for that. Man, crazy. So on the C Spire text line, someone said, if citizens pay into Social Security, they should be guaranteed financial security long before any welfare programs. Why should Social Security recipients suffer at the cost of welfare? Well, first, Social Security does not guarantee financial security. It's a program that entitles you to benefits out simply by participating, by paying in. And you got to pay in for 10 years, by the way, to get retirement benefits out. So it's not guaranteed to assure financial security. I just want to make that distinction. But I understand what you're saying. You pay in, you expect to get money out. And it was designed as insurance originally. It was insurance against poverty back in 1935. If you happen to make it to age 65, you got a little money that you can rely on from Social Security to keep you from being poor and living out your final years in poverty. Remember, the life expectancy, 59 in 1935 for a male, 61 for a female. So it wasn't thought at that time many people are going to make it to that threshold. Well, of course, times changed, and life expectancies have improved dramatically since then. But the program design still in place and really hasn't been changed materially since the 80s. So, but I get it. And it's really not a matter of welfare versus Social Security. And I know the Democrats like to say, well, if it weren't for the tax breaks we gave to the billionaires, we could have universal child care. No, that is a false comparison. It's not a one versus the other. If that were the case, if we truly managed
if throwing money at problems actually solved the problems, then Jeff Bezos' ex-wife would have solved all the problems by now, because she's given $20+ billion to liberal causes, and it hadn't done jack diddly squat.
That's absolutely true. Because it's not a function of, well, let's look at the amount of money we got in here, speaking as if I'm a member of Congress. We can only spend this much, guys. Let's figure out how to spend it. I wish that were the case, but if it were, we wouldn't have $2 trillion deficits and $39 trillion of debt. It's not a one versus the other here. And the Democrats are completely wrong. Well, it's because the tax breaks for the billionaires, and lately their big thing is everybody that made over $600,000. If it weren't for that, and they give you this long litany of things we could have if it weren't for that, that is a false comparison. It's a false narrative. That is not true. It's not a one versus the other. Again, we should hope that we managed our financial affairs that way, but we don't. We borrow money to make ends meet and to fund all these various programs. So with respect to Social Security, those are separate. In that Social Security, the money that goes in and comes out flows through a different accounting mechanism, a different fund than the money that goes in and flows out in the general fund. That would be the income taxes you pay and all the various functions of government, defense, all the various welfare programs, etc. That's completely different. They're separate. There's a firewall between them. So it's not a one versus the other there. The bottom line is the way Social Security is designed, it ain't going to have enough money coming in 2032 to pay its obligations going out, and something's got to be done. Coming right back with a final segment on Middays.
Hey, this is Bob.
Properly set all controls before recording.
All systems go. The talk that keeps Mississippi talking. Middays with Gerard Gibert on SuperTalk Mississippi.
On the C Spire text line, just talking about Social Security and Medicare, same boat, going broke. Medicare, like the tobacco trust fund, had it been put in a trust for purposes intended, there might not be such a problem. Unfortunately, that cannot happen. The federal law does not allow that, and the same is true with Social Security. Those trust funds cannot invest in private securities. They can only invest in Treasury bonds, and that's exactly what Senator Bill Cassidy wants to change. I'm for that. He just wants to prime it with $1.5 trillion of borrowed money, essentially, is what he wants to do, to prime it and go invest it in private securities, which would fix the problem on a long-term basis and should have been done back when President George W. Bush recommended it, but the Democrats, through a hissy fit, said, "You're privatizing Social Security." No, we're trying to make sure the thing is around to pay benefits. Imagine where it'd be today. We wouldn't be having this conversation. But instead, the program is limited to invest in, and this is where people get a little confused. It's thought that, well, Congress rated it. It didn't. Law requires the program to invest its surplus. That's when it takes in more money than it pays out. Remember, it's a pay-as-you-go program. There's not an account in Washington with your name on it that's got how much money. It's got money saved in it. It tells you how much you contributed, but it's not in a bank account somewhere with your name on it. Just wanted to make sure that that's understood. And it's the same with the Public Employees Retirement System in Mississippi. You pay into it, and there's a record of how much you paid in. But it's not like a 401k plan that's held in trust or held by a third party that's got your money sitting in it, that you could go access at any point in time. Different structure. But W. Bush wanted to do that. And the Democrats went crazy. He saw it. He knew it. Congress knew it. That was a recommendation. So Bill Cassidy's saying, well,
so you're saying Democrats are short-sighted and stupid?
Very much so. And what they really always, of course, they're always gonna opt on big issues like this in favor of government, not the private sector. That's the bottom line. We couldn't possibly allow Social Security to invest money in private companies, regardless of the fact that instead of producing a 2.5%, 3% return, we may get 8 or 10. No, we can't do that. If the Public Employees Retirement System of Mississippi had such restrictions as Social Security does, it had gone broke 40 years ago. There's no way it could be as generous with its benefits as it is if it were restricted in its investments. And so so I support Cassidy's idea there. I just get a little worried about going into the hole for another $1.5 trillion on top of what we have. So, in Medicare too, it's limited, and it honestly, the money goes in and out of that thing so fast. It doesn't have any surpluses. It's been in that situation for quite some time. It is draining the trust fund, and it too is scheduled to essentially run out of money in the trust fund. At which point, the amount coming in won't be sufficient to pay the amount going out, and the Congress, again, is going to have to act. If Social Security fails, how many souls will be added to the welfare rolls? I truly don't know the numbers. It just seems like natural cause and effect. Well, first of all, I don't think that Social Security is going to fail. I do not think for one iota of a second that the Congress is going to allow this to materialize. Yes, it's scheduled to be unable to become insolvent effectively, to be unable to meet its benefit obligations in 2032, but not for 1 minute do I believe that the Congress is going to allow that to happen. It's going to have to act. There are all kinds of ideas on that, including this one that I've talked about with respect to Senator Cassidy. No other serious discussions other than the Democrats who want to raise or get rid of the cap on contributions, which means that, once again, we'll rely on a small number of people to pay a whole lot more into the program but not receive any more out. So essentially the rich people will pay for everybody else's benefits. That's what it means. They won't say that, but that's what it means. So don't know what's going to happen. And, yeah, I would agree that people would be on welfare if Social Security fails because they wouldn't have money coming in. The average benefit, last I checked, is about $2,400 a month, the average of all recipients. I don't think that's going to happen. I'm just making the point that Congress is going to have to act and that this is going to cost money. Just is. I don't think we're going to see any cuts whatsoever. How much of it would have been lost in the dot-com bust in 2008? There was, or in 2008, virtually none of it. I mean, Thomas, you just, I don't even know how to have that conversation with you, man. We're out of here today. We're back again tomorrow. Stay safe and God bless.
SuperTalk Mississippi Media Production.